Yes, sir.
Good. Well, Wendy Schneider asked me to prepare a brief outline as to who the leaders of the Beth Jacob congregation were at the time the synagogue was moved onto Aberdeen Avenue. Many of us may not know that Beth Jacob was previously situated on Hunter Street, where the City Hall is presently. As I can recall, it was sort of snuggled into the upgrade between the northern side of the road that passes City Hall. The building was planned in 1951 and was up and running in 1954. And the first turning of the sod and the laying of the cornerstone was on June 10, 1953. The cornerstone was laid by Nate and Faye Adler, Mr. and Mrs. Sam Pollock. Rabbi Lichtiker of the JCC made the blessing. Eva Levy, the president of Sisterhood, and Bill Schreiber, the co-chair of the building committee, gave remarks, as well as George Rosenblatt, who was president of the CJO. Mayor Jackson was there, and Ellen Fairclough was there as well. I was only 17 when the synagogue was opened, and my memories are fairly vague. Consequently, I asked around other members, senior members, whose memories aren't that clear. But we do have the Red Book, and that helped me a lot. Now, Samuel and Sophie Steinberg led our family from the Hess Street Shul to Beth Jacob Synagogue when the synagogue moved onto Aberdeen Avenue. Just prior to that, we had prayed at the Hess Street Shul that Rabbi Simon, in his somewhat pompous style, once referred to it as a spittoon-type synagogue. I happened to like spittoons. They were nice and shiny, and I liked them. It was one of the few things I liked about Hess Street Shul. So I never felt comfortable at the Hess Street Shul, and so because so much went on either in Yiddish or in Hebrew, and it was so boring and nobody understood what was going on that members often fell asleep, and they were awakened only by smelling salts that was administered by Mr. Schur and Abe Chertkov. So I was occasionally kept amused by Sam and Barney Rosenblatt, who sat in front of me, and behind Mr. Davidoff, who was Lou Davidson's father. So for a young guy, the synagogue was frustrating. And it was also frustrating because women were upstairs, and we were downstairs, and if I had any prayers, it was basically that the women should come downstairs and I could sit with them. But having said that, all the characters of the place were marvelous, and probably somebody could have written a novel about them. But I wanted to leave Hess Street as in from my bar mitzvah. Having chanted the Torah portion in my Haftorah, as required by Rabbi Katz, the famous Rabbi Levine arose and gave me a lecture, presumably to help me live my life. He held me by the back of my neck, so we were face to face. He should have used Listerine that day, but he didn't, maybe not for a month or so, and he spoke to me in Yiddish for what seemed to be an impossibly long time. And in this confusion, my only thoughts were, we gotta get out of here. We did, and I was grateful, but for some reason I still belong to Hess Street Shul now. However, in 1954, the Beth Jacob began the debate on severing its ties with the Orthodox Jewish Congregation of America and to join the United Synagogue of America, the conservative movement. At that time, the conservative movement espoused the mixing of sexes. And as a young fellow, the thought of sitting with females was very exciting. And just watching the fashion shows going up and down the aisles was really exciting, and quite frankly, still is exciting. It's good to see. The rabbi who initially supported this move to conservatism was Jacob Green. He was a very imposing man who always had a big cigar in his mouth. He was a good athlete and was always seen on the basketball court of JCC. He also gave great sermons, and we loved him and liked him. But he wasn't with us for very long because he got a better offer from a Baltimore congregation, and he left us somewhat shortly after he joined us. What really excited me, though, was Cantor Henry Zimmerman, who had been appointed cantor in 1954. What a great tenor voice. Trained in the classical tenor traditional school in Eastern Europe, he was very exciting. Every Shabbos he treated us to at least 2 high C's. His daughter Marion still is a member of our congregation and can be approached from time to time and tell us what a great man he is. But he had this beautiful dog, a beautiful white dog. And when I visited him at his home one day, he talked to his dog in Yiddish, which the dog fully understood and responded to him in a very obedient way that humbled me, is because the dog knew more about Yiddish than I would ever know. However, just after the opening of the new shul, the synagogue was incorporated on October 19, 1956. As part of its charter, the congregation was noted as being affiliated with the United Synagogue of America. It should be noted that when he was appointed the new rabbi in 1954, Rabbi Simon strenuously insisted that affiliation with the conservative movement be vigorously pursued, and that was done. Well, who were the new directors of the congregation? I can't think of a better way to sort of list the leaders of the shul at that time. Max Stein was then the president, and I think he was president for about 8 further terms. Max was my mentor in the synagogue and schooled many of us in how to run the congregation and to support the community. Cecil Levy was a future president and the father of John. George Goldblatt, in whose name our Hebrew school is designated. Jack Friedman was a secretary. Nate Adler was the first vice president. I met with Nate on many occasions. He loved the shul and was always very generous. Charlie Golhar, a man of great humor, with whom I worked with for many years on the seating committee. Charlie was the de facto representative for those who needed seats and had problems getting them at the shul. He would intervene on their behalf, make their case, and work out settlements. It was Meyer Baruch, Max Lightstone, Hyman Sobel, Sam Adler, the wonderful Harry Bube, Cecil Feldman, one of my favorites, who for many years maintained order in the service with charm and good humor. Joe Laskin, another very cordial keeper of the services. Sam Lax, who was the membership chair for the new shul. Sid Levy, Jordan Livingston, who loved our synagogue and who championed education for many years and became president. Ray Miller, who with Nate Sherman ran the Tefillin Club. Max Mintz, our deluxe caterer. Sam Pakin, Sidney Pakin, an esteemed barrister who died at a very young age. Mickey Rapkin, who looked after my glasses and everybody else's glasses in the city. Phil Rosenblatt, who died too soon. We miss his exuberance for a living. Henry Schreiber, a very vocal lawyer in demand in Hamilton, and he and Monica were the first to be married in the new Beth Jacob synagogue. Bill Schreiber was a dominant leader of the bar in Hamilton and who maintained order in the synagogue with his piercing high voice. Nate Sherman, who was a leader of the young people and a gabbai. Sam Smirlik, Reuben Levy, a prestigious president. Albert Feldman, who handled the shul real estate transfers and was a gabbai. Dan Kaufman, a future president, Isaac Levy, Archie Levine, Harry Minden, a gabbai it seems forever, Sam Pollock, Ben Rosenfeld, Jack Shapiro, a leader in the congregation and a gabbai, Ken Sobel, a great Hamilton leader who founded CHCH, CHML, and was very generous to our community and who helped develop many projects in Hamilton. He died much too soon. George Pollock, or a pagan, the creator of the moshel. What is a moshel? I never knew. When I joined the board, he kept putting forward moshels. I had no idea to what they were until Harold Back told me they were motions. Morris Silver, Frank Goldblatt, a man of great humor, and with his brothers were great contributors to the Jewish community. So I was only a youngster, young teenager when all this began. But there's a strong string from all of that to now. The Goldblatt family, some who are not on the corporate first papers, have been a strength to the congregation and the community. If we need help, I went to Marvin and Abby and Frank and Morley and Malcolm. Were always there for Beth Jacob and the entire community. Wendy is with us. She is Marvin's daughter, as well as John Levy, who is in the shoes of Reuben and Cecil. The Richters have assumed the leadership of their father, Frank, very approachable Frank, and Cindy is a major source of strength to all of us. Very quietly as well, the eccentric Murray Rosenblatt put a lot of money in the shul and even went out with me to canvass in his most unique way. Stanley Sobel helped us out with the new cemetery. I wish all of these men were with us just so that you could experience the thrill of being with them. And I'm sure that Phil Rosenshine would agree with that. Lastly, it's really important to recognize the sisterhood leaders at the time of the movement to Aberdeen Avenue. Trudy Adler, Belle Adler, Faye Adler, Mrs. Bader, Hannah Feldman, who always cooked the turkeys, Dolly Goldblatt, Rose Halpern, Rebecca Kaufman, Sarah Laskin, Eva Levy, Rose Pagan, Francis and Jeanette Silver, Dorothy Sherman, Rose Sway, Mrs. Sidney Weston, and Ida Wright. Whenever we needed meetings, Barbara and Sandy Goldblatt always were there for us. So that is a brief summary of who the leaders were at the time the synagogue moved to Aberdeen Avenue. One of the things, when I came back as co-president for the better part of a year, one of the things we did is we pushed Rabbi Biller to get it done. And he did it. And for that, I'm thankful for Rabbi Biller. He moved our congregation forward. The idea of that women have equal rights in the congregation, as well as certain responsibilities, same as men, is wonderful. And I think it's brought a new life into our congregation. And I had only wished, quite frankly, that Israel Silverman had moved to that point. But he couldn't do it, and I understand him for it, and it's unfortunate from my perspective. But I think what happened to change our congregation was Rabbi Salzberg. And as I said to Biller at one time, and I said to Rabbi Salzberg, you're not working for the shul, you are the shul. And Salzberg understands that, and he is the shul. And because he is such a good rabbi, people come to him, and we want to be a part of the shul. And I think he, for a large part of the present success of the shul, and I know you and John were instrumental in sort of developing this and getting him here. in going through the process where we had no rabbi for a period of time. But getting the right man was essential, and he is the right person for us.
You were around at a peak moment in conservative Judaism, when conservative Judaism was the movement in North America, and you have seen in your lifetime that decline. And you know, many people say, well, you know, it's Orthodox Judaism that's having a resurgence now, and Reform is now more like conservative. They got more and more Hebrew. And so I guess my question to you is, do you think that a conservative synagogue in Hamilton still has an opportunity to appeal to today's Jews?
The answer is yes. I really mean that. One of the biggest problems that we have in Hamilton is our children grow up and they move away. And you don't have sort of this feeling of, in our synagogue, of the continuity of the family within the synagogue, because my kids have moved away and they're happy there, and they don't look to Hamilton as a place to be. And I understand that. And that's very common. Secondly, our congregation used to be a congregation of entrepreneurs, businessmen. That's not the case anymore. And businessmen have a certain wonderful attitude towards the things that they're in. And we have become, in a large part, a city, and in Jewish, generally in this Jewish enterprise, individuals in town have become professionals, and they're different from businessmen and so on. But the fact is, when all's said and done, we have a sliding, declining population in Hamilton. If you look at all our synagogues, you take a look at who the biggest part of each congregation is in terms of sectors, you will see that the 70 to 80-year-olds are the biggest part of these congregations. And it's true. I had an experience the other night that sort of shocked me. I was in Shul, it was Hanukkah, and they said, they pointed to me, you have to light the candles. I don't want to light the candles. You have to. Why? You're the oldest man in this service. And that's awful. It was awful for me to realize that I am in the 70 to 80 year group. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. And
do you think Beth Jacob has what's going to keep Beth Jacob thriving over the next 50 to 100 years?
Well, there's a lot of young people coming up behind you. Not a tremendous number, but a large number. And I think the best thing that you could have done was to build a small sanctuary for Shabbos, reserving the major sanctuary for the high holidays. And people tell me how wonderful it is to go to the sanctuary, and it's crowded, and there's activity, and there's children back and forth, running in, running out, and it's people like that. And the synagogue will thrive because of that small sanctuary. My family was always involved in the community in some way or another. The man who I'm named after, my great uncle Morris, was president of the Hess Street Shul. My mother was always involved in Beth Jacob Women as a secretary for many, many years. My Uncle Joe, he was involved in the community, and he was that kind of individual. My father as well. He worked very hard, my father, and he didn't have a lot of time to get involved in organizations because he was involved. I think he left the house at 6 in the morning, was back at 5 or 6 hours, 6 in the evening. He didn't have the time to get involved in the community, but I wanted to, and that's just the way we were. And Milton and Jerry are all the same way. Bill Morris, my friend Bill Morris, the same way. He's always involved in the community. Make sure his kids are involved in the community. And yeah, that's just the way we are.